Today we have Dave Ogle with us. He is one of my favorite people. I had the pleasure of meeting him in Nashville, Tennessee, and working with him on a lot of video shoot sets. He also just has one of the most interesting kind of like upbringing experiences. He grew up with missionary parents. He lived all over the world. He's been to every state in the United States. He's been to Africa numerous times. And he just has a really interesting life perspective that I think we can all learn something from. Well, thanks so much for hopping on with us. I was describing, I reminded Kate who you were, like, hey, like, you remember Dave? He was at the wedding. And I was like, I feel like if I was ever going to describe Dave to someone, it's like he's like a big hug, or like a gentle truth teller. Like when I think about you, I can always count on coming to you if I have anything going on. And even if you're like, ooh, she's a little off on this, like you will respond honestly, but like in a way that's easy to receive feedback. And I think that that is a rare quality and like something that most people should strive to have. And it seems to come really naturally to you. And I think it's just because you're so genuine and like, but most of the time that I'm with you, you don't have to give me gentle, constructive criticism. We're just laughing. And I feel like that is like the thing people talk about with you. It's just like, you're so fun and so sweet and always laughing. And when we started this podcast, I just really wanted to have people on that their stories were super interesting to me. And I feel like every time I have a conversation with you at work or wherever we're at, something comes out about your life. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? So we're super excited to have you on to just talk about your life and kind of all of the quirky stories you have.
Totally. Thank you for having me. This is a lot of fun. I've never done a podcast before, so I have no idea if I'll be interesting or what.
Well, let's start with your childhood, because I don't think anyone could listen to you talk about that and think that's not interesting. And this will be really fun for Kate because she doesn't really know much about your childhood.
Yeah, I had a atypical childhood. I mean, you know, the funny thing about, I guess, anyone's childhood is you either think it's totally normal because it's your childhood, right? So you don't have anything else to base it on. But then, you know, as you get older, you get the context of other people's childhoods, and you're like, "Whoa, that was really weird." And that's kind of how it was. My parents were missionaries, were full-time missionaries, in a non-denominational kind of outfit that they were basically hippies. And after high school, both of them joined this missions organization and took off and just started traveling and met each other doing that. They started their family, and for the first basically like 10 years of my life, I you know, basically just lived like a nomad. I think I moved 17 or 18 times before I was 9 or 10 years old.
That's crazy.
I've been to every state in the United States. I lived on a bus. I spent 5 years in the Caribbean, in St. Croix, the Virgin Islands, and in the Bahamas. And anytime I say that to people, they're like, "Oh, wow, so rough," you know, missionary life or whatever. Yeah. But the truth is that those places outside of where tourists go are pretty rough, and they're basically third world environments. And again, I didn't know any of this, you know, because I was a kid. So I just was like, well, this is how everybody lives, right? And we lived on a base with like 25 other people. I ate every meal every day with like 30 other people. Everybody had chores that we had to do around the base and stuff. My school was basically all Caribbean kids, Black kids, except for me and my sister. And I just thought it was normal. I mean, the first crush I ever had was on a Crucian girl. And I thought she was wonderful. My mom has this story. She's like, you came home and you were saying, you know, how beautiful this girl was. And you said she had 1 million beads in her hair. And, yeah, I mean, I thought it was was great. And so in contrast, when we came off of the mission field, my dad became a pastor at a church in Louisiana, and I was in the American South, in the like early 90s. And it was such a shocking thing for me because, the kids there had grown up with segregation and with issues and telling horrible jokes and, using the N-word. And I didn't even know what that word was. I had no idea that there was this rift of racism. I had no context for it. And it kind of blew my mind. I was like so naive, but I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm happy I was naive, it's good to be naive about the bad stuff until you need to learn that lesson, I guess. But yeah, I continued to travel after that. I've been to Africa many times. I lived in Central Asia in a place called Kyrgyzstan, in the capital city, which is called Bishkek. I played in a rock band there, where I was the lead singer.
See, that's what I'm talking about. Like, that's like something that would come up at the craft service table. You're like, that time I was in a rock band in Kyrgyzstan. And I'm like, oh, literally, Dave, what? Like, what do you mean?
Totally typical life. I don't know.
We were there and they wanted us to, I joined the same missions program that my parents had been involved in. And so I went on my outreach to Kyrgyzstan, and, it's primarily Muslim country. There's some fundamentalism there. So our whole journey was to essentially make friends with these kids and get them to go to this community center, really is what it was, that two other people were running. And there they would, of course, there would be the church stuff for sure, but there was also just a lot of community organization and development for a lot of these college kids. And so they were like, we really want college kids to come, but we don't know how to get, the word out to a bunch of kids and stuff. And we were like, I'll play rock music, let's go around and we'll get shows wherever we can get them. And then we'll invite kids to come to English class and we'll hang out, And so that's exactly what we did. And we got a gig in the heavy metal club in Kyrgyzstan. It was called Tequila Blues. And because a lot of times their words just get kind of mixed up in Russian. And so then it translates back to English and they're like, yeah, rock and roll, tequila blues. It was just it's totally not what you would imagine. It was a bomb shelter. Actually, it was a Soviet bomb shelter. And so you went in, because Kyrgyzstan was a part of the Soviet Union until 1991. So you would go in on the top and then go down these steps. And then it got to this door for the club, which was the bomb door. So it was it had to have been 3 feet thick steel. And they open it up and everybody would go in there and there was combat nets all over the ceiling. And there was this huge mural of Satan playing the bass and all these kids that were just wanted to headbang and go nuts. And we went down there and I was like, I'm so scared. I don't know what I'm doing here. We were going to be playing pop punk songs, And the first band got up and it was a female lead singer and she was unbelievable. She had this huge ponytail that went all the way down her back. And she got on stage and I'm like, oh my God, what is this going to be? The music is super heavy, and she gets up and just goes, whoa. And everybody in the place just started losing their minds. And I was like, oh no, I'm going to get up there. I'm going to make a fool of myself. But we got up there to do it and they loved us because we sang in English without an accent. And so they thought it was the best. They just went nuts for us. They wanted us to come back every weekend. So we got to know everyone there. They gave us a heads up because at night to clear the club, they would throw a mace bomb, essentially, a mustard gas thing. And I don't know what it was, but it just made your eyes and nose
get
burn.
Out.
And the guys behind the bar would put on gas masks and then throw the things. And everybody would be pushing to get out that huge steel door and run up the stairs. And so the guys would always give us kind of the heads up. They're like, it's time to go. I'm like, yes, it's time.
So when you were doing that, what were you guys what were the lyrics? Were you singing covers of American songs? Were they?
Yeah.
songs? Like, what were you singing?
We sang.
I just, do you remember any of the songs?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we did an Offspring song. We did there's a punk band that does all cover songs called Me First and the Gimme Gimmes, and we did one of their songs. We did a song by Silverchair, a big 90s alternative band. I think we did do some Christian tunes too, but like all kind of in the same like rock mode, so that like, you know, it was like anything that was relatively heavy, because that's what all these kids wanted, you know. They just wanted to go nuts in this crazy basement.
And how old were you at this point?
Let's see. I guess I was 20 years old.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It was wild.
So then you do all of that, and whenever you go into mission work like that, I guess because it's all so foreign to me, I've never done mission work at all. I don't know anything about it. Like, how are you guys paying for that? Do you have a job outside of that? Or is that something that like the church funds? Or like, what are you guys doing to earn an income or to, you know, eat?
Yeah. So, so my parents, they never had it. Their job was the mission work. And so they had supporters from churches in the States that they would, you know, send newsletters to, tell them about the work they were doing, invite them to come down and see it themselves. And so then I did the same thing. I got supported to go and do this training program, which was, I mean, it's very cheap because you're living so cheaply. Like it's, you know, I mean, when I grew up, you know, I had no idea what like new clothes. I never had new clothes. I never had new gifts. Like the gifts were always just like somebody else would stop using a bike and it was like, happy birthday. You know, it's like you start using that bike, you know? But it was fine. I don't think kids care about that kind of stuff unless someone tells them they're supposed to, you know? So yeah, I mean, it wasn't a lot of money, but it was, you know, what it took. So like there was 5 of us in the band, 5 of us guys, and we all lived in the same apartment, which was a super small apartment. In fact, the kitchen had a window that opened right into the bathroom and overlooked the bathtub, which is, they didn't have a shower, they just had a bathtub. And the guys used to, whoever was in the bathtub while someone was cooking, you know, you always tried to, I don't know. It was like, I remember several different times.
Toss a little snack.
Like, yeah, well, it was just like you could mess with the person, like dump cold water in on the other side of the window and stuff like that. And I slept on a couch there for like months, like, and all the guys took the bedrooms because I can sleep anywhere. That's another thing, a gift of my childhood. I literally can sleep anywhere.
Yeah. Jen too. Jen's really good at falling asleep anywhere.
Dave, with that, Kate and I recently, I think we had a conversation with Logan, maybe when I was home, and we were just talking about they're not involved with like a church, but Logan grew up going to church intermittently. And he was like, I wish there was this space where like people who weren't a part of a church still had that same kind of community. So I think that's super interesting. Like, I know some people who do mission work and it's like very explicitly probably what most people think of when they think of mission work. It's like, oh, you're like handing out Bibles, you're, you know, doing stuff like that, teaching Bible verses like some of these more community related or just like literally hands and feet, like we're helping feed people, we're helping provide medical care. So it's super interesting. I never would have imagined, like if I just heard that story totally out of context, like a rock band that's part of mission work. But it is like, I mean, the community that kids can get through sports or acting or being a part of a band or any of those things, whether a church group, like that is, I feel like so crucial for kids to have that space as they're growing up and like navigating all those things. So that's like a really cool idea.
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, it was a lot of fun. I met people there that became very, very close friends of mine and really changed my life, I think, more than I changed theirs. And because I was still a very naive kid, you know, and I was that set me on a journey to eventually, I think, walking away from traditional religion. And I didn't know it at the time, but it was then that I really started to open up to other ideas, because I met Muslims that were wonderful. And and I met Soviet communists that were wonderful people, and taught me a tremendous amount. I met a woman in our apartment building. She was like sweeping the hallways, and I tried to speak Russian to her, because I try every place I ever go. I try my best to speak the language, and I'm horrible. But it's funny, you know, because you say something like really silly to them, and so they start laughing. So I did that to this older woman, and she started dying laughing. And one of my friends was there, so he started translating, because she started talking to me, and she invited me to come have tea with her at her place. And I said, yeah, tell her I'll come. And so we went, and I just started once a week. I would go and drink tea with her. And she told me so much about the Soviet Union. And she had been a professor. And when the Soviet Union fell, she lost her job. And now she would sweep the hallways in the apartment building, and then the street in front of the apartments. And she got to stay there for taking care of the building. And she let one of her other friends live with her too. So they were just in this jammed little apartment. But when we had tea, she would set it all out really nice. And I probably spent, I don't know, several hours with her throughout the time that I lived there. And she taught me a tremendous amount about my misconceptions. I think because you grew up in America, you just think Russia's horrible. It's just like the enemy in every action movie, you know, or whatever.
For sure.
When I was a kid. The Soviet Union is horrible, and you know, whatever. And there are a lot of bad things that came out of communism, but there's plenty of bad things that come out of capitalism too. And I just think that cracked the sort of egg of my brain and started letting something else, all these other ideas come in. And I realized that ideas aren't bad, that, you know, what people do with them can be, but I needed to see things for myself and stop just sort of going, oh yeah, well, whatever you say, that's what I'm going to do. And that just kind of kept going. That continued all the way through. I mean, the last 20 years of my life.
Something I think that's really interesting about that is I always said that I loved college, loved my undergrad. And if someone would pay for me to go to school now, if I could make an income, I would be in school my whole life, just because I think there's so much to learn. But I always said, in our field, it doesn't really matter if you have a degree, if you're going into something that especially that involves the cameras, because the cameras are always going to change. And it's really, I feel like there's alternative ways to get those resources for yourself. But I always was I'm so grateful I went to college, because we grew up in such a small town that we weren't exposed to a lot of different ideas. And so when I went to college, even though my college was only 30 minutes away, it was night and day experience from what I had at that point. I was in some of the classes, I was the minority, which had never happened. I was meeting people of different religions. I lived with a girl who had a different religion than me. And so I always attribute that as a fundamental thing that changed how I viewed the world, how I viewed relationships, how I viewed people. And it's so interesting to hear that in my mind, I think I always just was well, that's how I got that lesson, kind of under my belt. And I'm so grateful for that. But it's you had this totally different experience where literally your job was to have relationships with people.
Yeah.
And to hear people, to meet them where they were, hear them out, really get to know them. And that's the part of life I feel most people are out searching for all the time when they're burnt out at work. And they're just but they're really their cup is filled because they got to have coffee with someone and hear their story. So that's such a cool way that and that makes sense why you can literally, we can put Dave on set with anyone. And I mean anyone. And Dave will be their best friend at the end of the day. Doesn't matter who they are. Doesn't matter if they're polite or not. Dave will have won them over by the end of the day. And that totally makes sense to me, because you have this heart of just hearing people and like genuinely being interested in what they have to say. And probably a lot of that is attributed to how you grew up.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think when you see that side of humanity, when you see the idea, I mean, I'm very grateful for it, that I got to go to so many places and see things that were so different from me. But you realize that your connection points there's so many more connection points than there are differences. And when that truth kind of hits you again and again and again as you're growing up, I think you look at the differences or at people's fears or whatever's keeping them separated, and it's kind of silly, honestly. It's sort of it doesn't need to be that way, and like there's a lot of division for no reason, you know. Yeah. Well, but within saying that, I'll also say people's fears are valid, you know, of course. And so the things that keep us separated too can feel tremendously hard to get over. So I also want to say I see that too.
Yeah.
So how did you, you talked about your parents being parents and raising you and still doing mission work. What was kind of the progression for you of walking away from the mission work and then moving into, and what did that journey look like, I guess? You know, did you move directly into, the entertainment industry, or did you have kind of a lapse in time there where you did other stuff? Like, kind of walk us through that.
Yeah, well, it was the same, very similar to what Jen just said. It was college, really. That was the transitioning point for me. I came back from my time abroad and came back to Louisiana, and my father really wanted me to go to college. I really did not want to go to college. I just wanted to go to the next place, keep doing what I was doing. And he was like, I never went to college. You're going to go to college. And I was just so mad at him. But, I felt like I needed to do it for him and for my mom too, but definitely for him. And so I started at a state school in Louisiana, University of Louisiana, Lafayette, the Raging Cajuns. Maybe you've heard of it.
Oh. Maybe you haven't.
It's like the second state school in Louisiana. So it's actually pretty big. I mean, LSU is the largest campus in Louisiana, and then UL is sort of second. It had, I think the time I went, it had probably 16 or 17,000 students, and I got into theater. I went to the theater program because I had acted in high school and I really loved it.
You were in a rock band in Kyrgyzstan, so of
I was in a
course you
rock
went
band
into
in
acting.
Kyrgyzstan. Yeah,
Made for the stage.
I think I always like to perform, to be in front of people and do things. It's kind of the classic version of the story you hear so many performers talk about, where they got laughs as a kid and it felt amazing. And, when we were on the mission field, we used to do these skits and stuff, and even as a little kid, there's pictures of me in like a clown costume with like a big band in my waist, to make it look like a huge belly. And I would walk in and do this whole, gimmicky thing in church. And, I just thought it was awesome. And then I played music in high school. I was in a rock band. I don't know. I think the stage just felt like if I was going to be in college, then I was going to do something like that, And so I went into acting, and I was in Shakespeare plays and musicals. Me and some friends started a sketch group called Skit Happens. If I had started to open up when I was away, I really opened up in college because, obviously I met so many people that didn't have my same background, that I think looked at my naivety, my small Christian worldview, and were like, oh my God, look at this little baby. He has no idea what this world has for him. And, of course I met so many, people who were queer, gay, trans, and that became a whole new sort of world for me to understand, and to just another place, I think, where my heart needed to grow larger. And I'm so thankful. I mean, I had so many friends that really helped me do that, and were really kind to me. Even though I had no idea what was going on, I didn't understand, necessarily these lifestyles, and they were just really, really kind to me, and helped me, I think, to navigate that whole world. And so then by the end of college, still trying to hold on to, religion in some traditional sense, but by that point, it was, the tethers were stretching too far, because I was at the more inclusion that I started to bring into my life, into my heart, with all these new relationships and friends and ideas. It was just starting to pull and pull and pull at this traditional upbringing that I had. And eventually, it's a long story, but I was a youth pastor. I was helping my dad. I ran this whole thing. I was, get these kids super excited and talking about a lot. And I'm very proud of that time in my life. I was able to make a space for kids to talk about a lot of really serious stuff that they were going through. And I'm really proud that I do think during that time I was open enough to not shame them, but to give them a real space. And I think that as much as that work was amazing, it was still limiting. And I just wanted to sort of take the top off and really sort of jump into what I'd been hinting at, which was this real universal view of the world and of its religions and of its people. And so that's, and it coincided with like an accident that I had at the church where, helping these kids. I broke my arm actually, with two of the guys that were helping me run the show, and the church essentially, it was on church property. They were supposed to pay for it because of workman's comp. And, it was like the simplest thing. And basically they didn't have workman's comp, which is illegal. And instead of admitting that, they just basically said, look, you're going to have to figure out how to pay for this. And I was like, sorry, what? And we got into it, and the pastor essentially just wouldn't admit that he was in the wrong. And I just was so hurt by that, Also, I was on a lot of, painkillers at the time because I broke my humerus bone, which you can't put into a splint. It has to stay open so that gravity will pull on your arm and your bone will grow back normally. And it was such a painful process to go through. Nobody should ever break their humerus bone. There's nothing funny about it. I was dead tired. I was on painkillers. I was trying to go through rehab. I needed the support of these people that I was struggling to stay even involved with. And instead they just turned their back on me. And I was immensely hurt by that. And I just said, I'm done. I'm done with all this. This isn't what you say it is, because you say this is a place of, compassion and peace and caring. And I don't think it's any of those things. And, it probably has taken me the last, 10 or 15 years to come full circle there and I'm so happy for my friends who are involved in traditional Christianity. If it helps them, if they feel, like it's a part of their life where they do find all those things, I think it's wonderful. I really do. But for me, it was probably the way I grew up and all that. I had to just go, my own way. So that's where it's landed me now. And from there, I started, making movies. I moved to New York City. I tried to be an actor there. It's very difficult. I'm not sure if you've heard that. But I acted in a few things. I tried to do more. And so then I just said, well, I'm going to do it myself. I'm just going to learn how to make movies myself. And I went through an editing program where I worked on 2 different films. And then I started working as an editor, and I started shooting my own stuff. And then New York kind of almost drove me crazy. That was like 3.5 years. I think we were there 4 years. And then, I got into the business.
So when you were in New York, something we had talked about previously, like the idea of kind of the lessons you had to learn that were very specific to your upbringing. And I think that most people that I talk to would say that when they think about their big adventures or their big dreams, it always just felt out of reach. Like it was like, oh, I can't really do that thing. It'd be so cool to do that thing, but I can't do that thing. And I thought it was really interesting when we talked about that, you had like a different perspective and like different lessons you had to learn. Cause I had to learn like, hey, if you put in the work and you're kind and you meet the right people, like opportunities will present themselves to you. Like this is a world of opportunity. So I had to like kind of learn that confidence and like learn that it was okay to trust in the excitement of something. But you had a different lesson. And I think that's like super interesting to share with people. In case they're in your boat and not mine.
I think my lesson that I look back on when I think about that is, growing up the way that I did, I think that I had the exact opposite. I thought I could do anything. I thought, that if I did all the right things, then the biggest dream I had would come true, whatever that dream was. And I think that that's kind of like tied into this really kind of weird, this sort of weird idea that's in the church called prosperity gospel. But it's basically the idea is if you do everything right, then all good things will come to you. And
it's one of my least favorite gospels. I've seen that baby in play so many times at different churches. And it's like, dang, that's tough.
It's really really dangerous, I think. Because what ends up happening is when we were talking yesterday about this, it happens to kids now a lot. And I read an article about it. It's called the Disneyification of childhood. And what happens is that we watch these Disney movies, we watch all this stuff, and basically the story goes, here's this person who's down on their luck. Then they do everything they need to. They sacrifice, they do the right things. And then in the end, they marry the prince, or they get the princess, or, fill in the blank. And what you see in those films is they're making all the right choices, so then a great thing happens to them. And there's almost always somebody else who's making wrong choices, and then bad things happen to them. And so in a kid's mind, what they say is, okay, if I do everything that I'm supposed to do, then good things will happen to me. I'll be the princess in the story. But then what happens to a kid if something bad happens to them? If something bad randomly happens to them, then they'll say, oh, well, if I'm not the princess, then who am I? I must be the evil witch. I must be the whatever. And it's like this thing breaks open on you, and you're like, oh my God, the world hates me, because I must be a bad person, because bad things are happening to me. And and that's a really wild concept to me now, even though at the time I think I believed that wholeheartedly. And now I think about it, I think, oh my God, poor David, because any little bad thing.
The danger too of adding on religion to that, because then it's like, if something bad happens to me, I'm like, then it's tied to what does God think about me? And like, am I being punished? And when you see other people struggle, it can be like, well, are they struggling because they did bad things? And like, you lose the humanity. So it is
like an eternal punishment too, right? It's like if I do a bad thing or they do a bad thing, it's like, oh, you're going to be paying for that literally forever. Good luck,
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because our parents, mine and Kate's at least, like they were super supportive of us. There was always this like, I don't know if I don't know if it's fair to call it more of like a standard lifestyle or like a blue collar concern of like, these are the jobs that we've seen people have success in, and we want you to be successful. And so as parents, we're guiding you towards these things that are like sure and steady.
I don't know that I would say, I'm going to briefly, I don't know that I would say it was, I don't feel like mom and dad wanted us to necessarily be successful. They just wanted us to be like stable. It was like these are stable things. So you're not going to be a millionaire. You're not going to make like a lot of money, but we just want you to be stable. These are like the safe, stable things.
Yeah. And I think that was driven by their life experience. And I don't know. I think that for us, it was this idea of kind of here are the parameters for like the best chance of success. You can go after these things, but here's all the things you need to be careful of. So it was kind of all this like, it was like a timid step forward. But I never assumed that I could do anything because it was just like, oh, the world isn't made like that for people, for most people. So I do think it's just super interesting because I think there is a generation now, and every generation has this, where they're like, when I go to parent my kids, how am I going to parent differently? What am I going to take that really worked and what didn't work for me? And what do I want to do differently? And I think that I have had conversations with a lot of my friends who have kids of like, how do we make sure the pendulum doesn't swing too far the other way, right? Like where you're, and Kate and I have talked about this, especially with her kid, Ollie, because he's 10, or they're 10. And it's like, okay, so you want to build Ollie up. You want to give him, like, you don't want to make them feel fearful they can't do the thing they want to do. But you also have to provide like the structure and safety net. And how do we do that differently? And I think there is this continuum of like Disneyfication, but also like you want people to dream. So it's a really interesting thing to navigate.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Kate has a lot more to say about that than I do because I don't have kids. And I'm sure you do as well as you like navigate parenthood.
Yeah. My daughter is also 10. So.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's kind of a hard age, right? They're like really figuring it out. And out here, my Ollie is, just so smart. Like their brain works so fast. And so we're getting to that place of like, Ollie's trying to make sure that I think Oliver is really smart. But like, you're not smarter than me on everything. There are things that Ollie is smarter than me on, and I'm happy to say that. But then there are other things that like, you don't know what you're talking about, but I don't want to like crush you or make you feel stupid because like I can't even say it without getting teary. Like I have a very tender spot for like feeling stupid. And so I try really hard to make sure that my kids don't feel like that. But like, I don't know how to correct it sometimes when it's like, you are wrong about this thing, like this isn't, because I feel like it was very sharp. Anytime I had like an idea or I thought I knew something, that it was like, what are you, stupid? Like it's like such a, ugh. So I think for me, I really struggle with that because then I don't know how to correct the behavior. But then Oliver thinks that like they should be part of conversations that they shouldn't be part of. You know what I mean? I don't know how to navigate that in the way that it was like I could, when Ollie was little, it wasn't as big of a deal because it was like, you're just a little baby. You don't know what you're talking about. But like Ollie can read and can look things up and like wants to prove a point. And I'm like, but you still don't actually get it. And I don't know how to like navigate that space now.
Yeah. I think that, when I think about that with my daughter, Ivy, she's like, she has some similarities. She loves to be right. If she's wrong, it's like, oh my God, that's not what I meant, or, I'm not, she's not wrong, basically in her mind.
Right.
And,
no, I know.
Yeah, exactly. And it is a struggle. I mean, I think I try and remind myself that I think I try and remind myself that this is like a small space inside of a very long and large life that she's going to have. And like, that it's okay for like, every lesson doesn't have to be taught every time, you know? And like, if you look for the right time to like poke through that weird shell that they're kind of trying to make, and it only happens every once in a while where it's like her guard is down, and it could be because like something horrible happened at school or because of whatever. And it's in those times where it's like, I think she'll actually hear what I'm saying, you know? Or just random. It could be like, sometimes it's random. Like, it's like we're in the morning, we're driving to school, we're listening to Taylor Swift for the 500,000th time. And she'll like stop the music and be like, Dad, this happened to me yesterday. What do you think that, you know, like, and it's like the most random time and random question. And that's what I think is the most important thing, is to be present for those moments and to not let them beat you down to the place where you start shutting off those moments. Because I see and I feel that in myself sometimes. Like, I feel this reaction to go like, oh God, here we go. Now she's gonna blah 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 about how she, you know, whatever. And you just kind of want to shut it down before it starts. And then you realize like, oh man, I'm kind of running away from my kid. And like even though you're in the room, but you're kind of like subconsciously just kind of pulling away, you know, because it is because it is so hard. And it takes more out of you than anything else in the world, I think. So to be a mother of a child, I think, is by far the most like engrossing and complicated and energy zapping job of all jobs in the world, even more than a father. Yeah. I think there's something different about it. There's something different about that energy. There's something different about that connection. And I'm not saying that fathers can't have energy and connection and whatever, but when you watch a mom, it's like, wow.
Yeah. So then, to kind of, but with parenting and working, you know, I stay home. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I do stuff like this to fill my cup outside of that. But we see a lot of moms that have kids, and all of a sudden the career aspect kind of goes away. Yeah. And so with you having a kid and then still being able to like navigate growing in your career, like what did that look like for you? Or, you know, are you with Ivy's mom?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. You guys just celebrated 10. How long? It was more than 10 years.
20 years.
How long have you guys been together? 20 years. I knew it was a big one.
Yeah. So then like, how did your family dynamic change? How did Ivy's mom's career change, or kind of those expectations? Because I feel like a lot of times it is typically put on women to kind of take that role because just, you know, the way our country has kind of designated we do those things. And it works for some people. You know, my husband and I chose for me to stay home because what Logan was doing made more sense. You know, that just was, and I'm kind of just waiting for my time to have my time, you know, but for you your career has gotten to this place where it's like impressive and cool. And you were able to do that while still maintaining this idea of like being a present dad, and kind of how are you navigating that? How did that look for you?
Yeah, I think it's easily one of the toughest, you know, balances to find is the work-life balance, the where are your priorities, I think. And I don't always get it right. I'm so thankful for my wife, because the nature of our business, of production, and I'll say I primarily work as a director of photography and sometimes as a director, but I travel a tremendous amount to do that, and
sure, I'm
paid, you know, a sort of premium for the days that I'm working, because, you know, like Jen knows well, and you from being on set, it's 12 hours, you know, it's 10 hours minimum, 12 hours most of the time. And then overtime, you know, it's 15 hours, and everyone's sort of looking at each other like, oh, you cannot leave. Like, this is it. Like, it's the only job, I think I ever had that, like, it's so stressful. Like, every moment of the day is costing this really high amount of money. So everybody is so keyed in on what's happening. And so I think I can get lost in that sometimes and then come home and I'm probably not the whole person I'd like to be, to my wife or to my daughter. And I think that Lindsay, my wife, she's done such a great job over the years of knowing what I need to come down off of that, and work my way down. And that was years of back and forth of her going like, what? Like, you're not going to come right home after, the shoot or whatever. And I'm like, I need to step off this ledge. I need to go drink a beer with someone and, talk to them for a little while about how crazy that just was. And then let that all go and then come home and really be there, whatever that looks like for you. For some people it's that. For other people, it's like, they just want to hang with people from set so that they can like be like, wasn't that crazy today? And like, you can like kind of hash out the ups and downs of what's going on. But I do my best to not bring that energy back and to be present for my daughter, for Ivy, as best I can. And I think my wife is such a doorway to that for me. She's, she knows me better than anybody else knows me. I mean, and we have been married a long time. We got married at the end of college before we moved to New York together. 3 months after we were married, we went to Africa together. And we did workshops for kids there. She did dance and I did theater. And it was awesome. It was like a tremendous time. And after that, I think I was like, this is it. She's incredible. And yeah, we definitely are happy to still be together. But I think she had to learn that language and I had to learn her language on how to reconnect in this business, because it's like, you're busy and it's crazy and it's amazing because you're making money to provide. And then all of a sudden it's slow and you're having to reach out and figure out new avenues of income. And then it's crazy busy again and you're going nuts. And she's been the stability through that. And she sort of is like this rubber band that kind of just stretches either side and really makes like our life with Ivy, like so stable.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys have a family that live close to you? Where do you live now? Are your parents still in Louisiana?
They were for until this year. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and 5 years ago, I think it's 5 years, 4 or 5 years ago, my wife's mother, Donna, moved here, and that was the first family we had like in town. So she moved here when Ivy was. She's 10 now. So yeah, I think she moved here when Ivy was 5 or 6, and she's amazing. Like, I tell people she's like the other member of our family. She's just, she's not my mom, but like, she's wonderful. And for the haters out there on the mother-in-laws, it's not real. They're awesome. They can be amazing. She's amazing. And she really changed our lives because she made this other place for Ivy to feel safe and have connection with her and as a family. So, that really changed a lot. And it does change to have family near you, because now my parents were both retired last year, and they lived in an RV all of last year, just driving around the country and seeing friends. And then I finally was like, okay, but like, maybe let's get like a place just for you to have, So they moved here to Nashville. And so they're here now, and they're like another place, of family for us, for Ivy. And I talk to friends all the time who don't live around their immediate family, and it is such a different thing. It takes a village to raise children, like you do need that help and you do need that community, and I think that's true, and if you can have the grandparent, that's incredible, because that's like the it's an awesome thing, to be able to have, but it's definitely a blessing. Like, not everybody can do it, can have that.
Yeah. Does your sister live close to you? Or do you guys have a close relationship?
We have a very close relationship. My sister Charlotte, she lived in New Orleans for a very long time, and now she lives in Houston, Texas. My brother was living in New Orleans with her. He now lives in Nashville. He just moved up here. He finished his master's program, and so now he is living here. And it's awesome to have him. Him and Ivy have gotten so close over the last year, or even just half a year, I guess, since he's been here. She loves to talk to him. That's like the thing now. It's like she won't talk to me or Lindsay anymore. She's like, well, I'm just going to wait and talk to Drew about it. And I'm like, talk to Drew about it? What's he going to do? He can't help you with this. It's like talking about like school stuff or whatever. And she's like, I like talking to him, Dad. And I'm like, that's fine. I want you to talk to him, but I think I can also be in the conversation. She's like, you wouldn't understand.
Yeah, she's like, no, thanks.
Yeah. So him and her are really close. She loves it. She's like, I need to go dish with Drew. And that's what she calls it. Yeah, dish. But my sister and I are also super, super close. She's like, I guess 2.5 years older than me, but very close. Love her dearly. She stays connected to Ivy. She has Ivy come down to her house for a week every summer, and they do a bunch of crazy cool stuff. And she's a very good aunt and an awesome sister. Yeah, our whole family is super close. Probably, again, because of the way that we grew up.
Yeah. Yeah, where Logan and I live right now, we don't have any family around, and because Logan works a job that asks a lot of him, we don't have a lot of like outside time we haven't made like any kind of friendships that have lasted. There's like something wrong with my friend picker. I just kind of continually always have picked people that aren't very good to me. And so it's like, we've kind of been in this place of just like total isolation for the last few years, and like struggling because we like where we live, but like everyone else is so far away. And it's like, we can't get people to move here because it's so expensive, and people have everyone else has like their own lives there, but we actually just got back from a trip home, and we spent time with Logan and his whole family. Mostly, we spent a lot of time on this last trip, and it was like, we have 2 nephews and a niece that like I have barely seen the last 4 years, but like they're all teenagers, and like they were so fun, and it was fun to play games. And it's like, I think that you just you don't realize like that power of that community, even if it is just your family, but it's like, we just don't have it, and it's like hearing you talk about having this like community of like 20 people or 25 people that you guys kind of missionary work moved around with, and coming out of that, I'm like, gosh, that would have been magical. It feels like to have so many people that like know you and see you and care about you. So I love that your family have kind of like come to you,
Yeah. Because it's true. It's a blessing. I mean, I think that growing up that way, one of the things that you learn is that like to live that way, to have like that kind of openness around you 24 hours a day is truly like a human thing. Like as humans, we're not supposed to separate ourselves, I don't believe. Like that's a real modern concept, right? Like the older and older and older you go back and looking at civilizations, people lived in village lifestyles because they helped each other, because they had to. The door was open. It was never closed, and it's weird because it's weird to think about that now. It's like, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to unlock my door and let my neighbors come strolling in, But that when I was a kid, that's how it was. Like it was, I mean, you need privacy as well. And wasn't like we were, like, it was not like a I don't know, like a sister wives kind of thing or something like that. But at the same time, like, you know, there was a come and go sort of feeling to life. And I definitely feel for you. I have been at different points in travel and things like that. We've been in places where we were far away from people that we loved, and it's such a difficult thing because again, like community, that's it, right? Like that's the point, I think, in a lot of ways. Because you can have the most success of all. Like you can make a ton of money, and you can have, you know, you can become your version of Brad Pitt or something like that. And still, at the end of the day, what's that person looking for, right? They're looking for that other person, that other group of people to pour their life into and have that in return, you know?
Coming from living in New York, what brought you to Nashville? If it wasn't family, if it wasn't, you know, you were in the entertainment industry, did you have connections that brought you to Nashville, or kind of what was that move from where you had kind of started your career to now?
Yeah. Well, I had done a few projects in Nashville, just with a friend who was in the music business here. And he was one of my best friends, still is a very, very dear friend of mine. His name is Jason Moriant. And he lived here after Katrina. Him and his wife at the time had moved up here. And I was in New York. I was trying to start a film company there. I did start a film company there, but we were trying, my partner, Dave Epstein, and I had started this film company. We were working in a very small office in Chelsea. It was like kind of like you rented like a closet, essentially. That was like, here's your office. And they're like, how many desks do you want in there? And I was like, 2. And they were like, okay, there won't be a lot of room outside of the desks. And, you know, so this was like 2 desks, and then we would sit basically back to back, you know. He's a fantastic guy. And he was a wonderful partner, and he had a lot of patience with me. Because I did not know about business. I was completely useless. But I was bartending at a really swanky club in New York City called the Rose Bar. And it was in the Gramercy Park Hotel. They had a front bar called the Jade Bar. It was jade green. And then the back was the Rose Bar. And really, really famous people there every night. And it actually, you know, people ask me about that during the time and then now. They're like, who's the most famous person you saw? And I'm like, the thing that showed me that time working there was famous is just an idea. It's just an idea that people give you. There's nothing, I saw some people would be freaking out over a person, and I would be like, I don't even know who that is. You know, and then other times I would go, you know, one night, Sam Shepard came into the bar. Sam Shepard is a great American playwright and actor. And I was like freaking out, you know, because I was like, oh my God, can I take him his beer? You know, like I was going nuts. And, you know, one of the other waitresses was like, I don't even know who that is. Is he famous? And I was like, yes. It was such an eye-opening experience, though, to work there, because, you know, you saw the good, the bad, and the ugly, I think, of what celebrity is. And so I was doing that at night. I was trying to do this film thing during the day with Dave. I had gotten us a job down in Nashville with some connection I had. And so we both came down and we worked it and stuff. And I started to talk to Jason about, you know, man, I don't know how long I can be in New York. I'm really starting to come unglued. And I had my first real bouts with mental health struggles during that time. Panic attacks and real high anxiety level. I didn't know what a panic attack was. I mean, growing up the way that I did, I had never even heard about the idea of mental health. So when I had my first panic attack, I just thought I was having a heart attack. And I had no idea what to do. I was crippling fear. And So I started to work through that. I realized what mental health is, started to try and take better care of myself. And one of the things that just seemed like I had to do was to get out of New York. I love the city. I still love the city. I still get to shoot like kind of 1 or 2 jobs there, it seems like a year. And every time I go back, it's fantastic. One of my best friends in the world still lives there and is an actor. His name's Joseph Limas. He is fantastic. He's a wonderful, wonderful person. And I love going back. I love visiting. I love seeing him. I love the energy of the city. I don't think there's a place like it in the world. But I couldn't stay there. And so my dear friend Jason and his wife at the time, Brianna, they said, why don't you guys come and stay with us for the summer? And, they were really gracious to Lindsay and I. They just let us live in their place and try out Nashville. And they, basically were like, look, if you like it, then stay. And if not, we'll find somewhere else. And at first we both hated it. I was like, God, this is crazy. This is so slow. Everyone here is like this weird, form of Christian I don't like. It's just super judgmental. I was so like, I was stupid. I was just jaded from the city, and it was just all coming off me like scales, And then we were sitting in someone's backyard, and there was like a fire pit, and they were like, somebody started playing guitar. It was like the most stereotypical Nashville thing of all time. And I was like, I love this. This is amazing. And I looked at Lindsay and I was just like, we're staying. This is fantastic. And she was like, yeah, we're staying. And so we got into a really cheap apartment, which doesn't exist anymore in Nashville. There are no cheap apartments. We were paying $550 a month for a 2-bedroom in an old building on the east side. And it was fantastic. It was like almost like we got a New York apartment, the New York apartment we would have always wanted, but we got it in Nashville, and it was only $550 a month. And then it was just sort of like, okay, let's go. Like I had tons of opportunities here that I don't think I would have had in New York, just because of the size of the city and then the relationships I already had here that I didn't have there. And so I started editing music videos. That was like kind of one of my feet into the, getting my foot in the door on the music video world. And I started shooting my own stuff. I just started, I don't have to wait for anybody. I'll shoot my own things. So I did early music videos with people. I did some short films, met more and more and more people, started shooting BTS. That was, if you want to talk about like the hack into the industry, I think, that I randomly stumbled into, was I started doing behind the scenes work. Now people have like BTS people, usually like labels have people that shoot all the behind the scenes. But back then it was sort of still a new concept, I think, where it was like, we're going to shoot the music video, but then you're going to shoot another video that shows how we shot the music video, And so I would go around on set with this little camera rig, and I would interview people for behind the scenes. And I would do these interviews with people like the gaffer and talking to them about how they were lighting a scene or something. And they were like, is this for the behind the scenes video? There's no way you're going to use this stuff. It's like real technical and whatever. And I would be like, no, this is good. We're just going to, and really what I was doing was just learning how to do stuff, and just sort of picking up little things everywhere that I could. And then I would cut these videos together, and they were pretty cool little videos. And I think I made more money doing those little behind the scenes videos than I did as a camera operator, even as I grew in the industry. That was another little hack I think you could learn, is if you could, that was another thing I saw. I was like, oh, if I wear multiple hats, I can get paid in multiple different places. I can edit this thing, I can also produce it, and I can shoot it. So I can, sort of take all those things and bend them together, and it ends up being a good bit of money. But I had total curiosity. And I think that's probably one of the big things of my life, has been a real gift of curiosity. And in the film world, it was like, as long as you were a good person, if you were kind, on set, and you worked really hard, I think the doors can open for you all over the place. And that's what I tried to do. And so, yeah, I sort of stair-stepped my way into eventually being asked to DP stuff on my own. But before I got there, I worked as a camera operator under a lot of really great directors of photography. My friend James King was one that I worked for, and he was phenomenal and taught me a lot about lighting. Rhett Baer, who's a director of photography in Los Angeles, incredible guy, such a kind guy, and also just taught me so much about the business. And Roger Pistol, who's like a phenomenal director of photography here in Nashville, has shot like some of the most beautiful stuff that's been shot here. But yeah, I mean, like so many people that I got to work under and see how they did the job, and then kind of formulate how I wanted to do it in my own way, my own style.
How old were you when you moved from New York to Nashville?
I was 28.
28.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure, because like, I think
right? 'Cause I'm 43
something I've talked
now. Age is that
Where
good
am
for
I?
me.
Where
Yeah.
have I been?
Well, yeah. Well, no, I only really asked because I think on another episode, Jen and I talked about how, like, you know, I spent all this time as a stay-at-home mom, and so it's like the thought sometimes is like, you know, my life is like past. The time when I should have started a career and built my way up is like gone, you know? And she was like, well, I don't think that it has to be like that. And it's like, I kind of had this thought of like, yeah, you know, for a long time, I wanted to be a lawyer. I was like, if I went to law school right now, by the time I graduated, I could still have like 25 years of a career in that before I hit retirement age. And so like, I like to try to think about, you know, with you, with Roman, and really even with Nancy, like, you know, where people were when they made career changes or where they progressed to like different areas, because I think sometimes people think you're supposed to find what you're going to do after college and just do that. And you might make, you know, a lateral move to a different company, but it's like similar vein of what you're doing. But I love to hear people, you know, while I'm sure it was so hard at the time, you know, you're saying, I can't do this in New York anymore. I'm going to move and then I'm going to start doing these other things. It's like, I'm just trying to kind of call attention to that idea of, you know, making those decisions when you're in your late 20s or your 30s or even your 40s of like, no, I want to do something else, and that's okay. I don't have to choose one thing and do it forever.
I think there's never been more, there's never been, I think, a time in history where that's more true than right now. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the real amazing opportunities of the modern era, because you can learn and you can expand yourself. So there's so many more opportunities to do that than there used to be, where it used to be, look, here's a traditional path. This is how you do it. You go to film school, you start to be a grunt worker on set. You pray to God that you can move up to a little less grunt work and then keep going until you're locked in. And then when you turn around, it's been 35 years and that's what you have to do, you know? And now there's so many more avenues of ways to get involved in it. But I think there's so many more avenues of ways to get involved in all kinds of different things. I mean, yeah, the law, social justice work. I think about like my wife, she's doing an expanding, I'm so proud of her. She's doing an expanded education program literally like next week. She's going to Colorado to do a cadaver course because she went from dancing into working in Pilates. And that's what she does now. She's a Pilates instructor. And she has helped so many people with mobility issues, back problems, neck issues, all different kinds of stuff where like I've talked with some of her clients, and some of her older clients are like, I couldn't pick up my grandkids until I started working with Lindsay. And now it's like, it's phenomenal how the change I've seen. And so she's wanted to like keep going and keep learning more and more. And there's a guy in Colorado who does an open cadaver course where they go in and look at nerves, ligaments, muscles, and see exactly how the body works to better inform her movement stuff. So yoga instructors go, Pilates instructors go, physical therapists go to this guy. And when she first told me about it, I was like, this is insane. That's gross. Don't
Yeah,
I love it.
And then,
it's kind of
she
really
got,
cool
like,
though. Yeah.
she got so excited about it, and she really was telling me like how it all was going to work. And she has such a heart for it, and she's so like when she went to his seminar here, that was like kind of a preamble to what she's going to do in Colorado. She was in tears with some of his stories where he talked about the people who had sacrificed to donate, their bodies to his work, and all the things that he was uncovering because of the work he was doing. And I just think there is stuff out there. There is ways to like still throw yourself into what, makes you feel something, what makes you passionate.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's also like, what is, when you're really like in your lane and you found the thing you love doing and you're doing it, the amount of experiences you can have even in 10 years or 5 years can be the things that you literally like take with you as you get even older and like reflect back on. You're like, I'm so grateful I did that thing. And it's like, when I left the entertainment industry in my mid-20s to teach elementary school, I had no intention on coming back to the entertainment industry. And by happenstance, I got back into it almost exactly 10 years ago. And when I think back to like all of the stuff I've done in the past 10 years, it would have been leaps and bounds worth it to have taken that step and gone in that direction. And so many of those experiences have been like, some of my favorite experiences have been with you, Dave, on set. And it's like the people I've met and the lessons I've learned and the opportunities I've had. I mean, we just shot this last summer, this amazingly, like, it was so touching, the video with the kids at the MLS and the soccer deal. It was with the Special Olympics and the Major League Soccer team.
Major League Soccer All-Stars.
There you go. And we were in DC, and it was like they treated these kids like they were VIPs. I mean, they came in and they had the bags and they got to meet all the players, and Dave was running camera and I was taking stills, and it was just the most like heartwarming thing to be a part of. And then we stayed at this like hotel, which you probably could rattle off more facts about that hotel than I could, but it was like a hotel so rich with history that if I like even think about that, like growing up as a kid, like one day you're going to stay in a hotel that a president stayed in. It's like, no, I'm not. Like, but we did. I mean, this hotel was so cool. Yeah. And so I think like even whatever amount of time you have doing the thing that sets your heart on fire, it'll be worth it to have taken the step to do the thing.
Yeah. And it's not easy, like, to do our business the way that I've chosen to do it, or the way other people have chosen to do it. Jen has certainly done it at different times as a freelancer. Freelancing is extremely difficult, and it's very difficult on your family because there isn't the stability of being able to walk, that sort of straight line from check to check, And listen, I'm also not knocking people who are part of a production company or part of an agency, or those people are still very creative. They're involved in the industry totally. But for a lot of folks, if you want to do certain jobs like DP or work as a writer or something like that, then sometimes you freelance is the way to go. And it's just chaos. Like the last 15 years, there's been so many times where, my wife, Lindsay, bless her, was just like looking at me like, I don't know, right? Like, is this totally worth it? Like you are going to crush yourself under the weight of this, And, and then you just, it works. You keep going. You find a new way. You do what you need to do. You go back and bartend for a while to keep going, or whatever it might be. But the sacrifices, I think, are worth it when the outcome is. I always said it this way. People say, "What's your dream? What's your goal?" I said, "I want to get what's inside out." I have these ideas, I have these thoughts, I have this stuff in me, and I want to get it out, and I want people to be able to see it and talk about it. And that's always been, the goal, right? And so that it's still the goal, but also I have to pay my electric bill,
Yeah. Yeah. Jen, do you want to do any rapid fire questions to wrap up?
Yes, I have some.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so yes. I already have some answers in my head for what you might say. So if you don't say them, I might gently remind you of my favorite story that I know about that. But weirdest work travel experience, like just something like ridiculous happened, and it's like, of course that would happen.
I was on a trip to Africa to shoot some documentary work, and it was a crazy trip in general, but it was with April Days, who's a good friend of Jen's, and we took a Jeep into this area of Kenya to meet and shoot with this tribe out there in Turkana. Turkana is like this area with and it's like still like thatched roofed dwellings where it's like you're like, I mean, it is in the desert and it is crazy hot and all this kind of stuff. But to get there, we like got into this Jeep and we went on this road, and it was the worst road I've ever been on in my life. It was, you guys, there was so many holes and things like that we literally were just being thrown into the ceiling of the Jeep and then back down to the seat, like over and over and over again. And April started laughing so hard. I couldn't stop laughing. We laughed for like 45 minutes because, in our circumstances, it's like, okay, yeah, it's a pretty rough road right here for a little bit, and you kind of get by and then it's over. This never ended. It was the same way for like an hour. And it was hilarious by the end because you were just like, everything hurt. Like you were just being thrown against the wall and back against the ceiling and down the thing. And you were like, it can't be this bad the whole time. And it was the entire time. And I remember April had brought these pretzels that were stuffed with peanut butter. And she was like, we're going to want snacks on the road. And instead, they were just all over the Jeep. They had just been thrown everywhere. And then there was just smashed peanut butter pretzels like all over the place. And I was like, that's a great idea, April.
Way to go, pal.
Thank you so much.
That was, we got to where we were going in the village. And they were so stoked to have us and for us to be shooting there. And there was literally just like a goat hanging from this open air kitchen. They had like just slit the goat's throat. And they were like, this is it. This is for you. Like we did it. And we got out of the truck and there's just pretzels all over the place. And April just looks and she sees the goat. And I'm like, we have to eat that, And she's like, oh my God. Because it just like got
she's like, I want my pretzels off the floor.
Exactly. But we did it, we sat down and I've eaten very, very strange things. That goat was sort of the least of what I've had fermented horse milk that they leave in a field to ferment over time. I ate raw meat in Ethiopia on another trip. That didn't end well.
You wouldn't advise that though, right? Like was that your bad?
I was in Ethiopia with April. We were doing another series, a documentary series, and we were there and everybody was going to go to this like safari kind of place for lunch where there's like live monkeys and stuff. And I was like, no way. I'm not doing that. It's so touristy, And I like told our driver, I was like, I want to eat where you eat lunch. And the driver was like, okay. And so he like brings me to this spot and it was traditional Ethiopian food and it was incredible. Their Ethiopian food is wonderful. It's very delicious. And you eat it with your hands and you just eat the plate that it comes on has bread that is essentially like a second plate. That is this spongy, really delicious bread that goes underneath all the food. And so you just tear the bread up from underneath it and then grab what you want and then eat it.
I'm already thinking about where this story is going to end. I can't even concentrate on the spongy bread.
And so I'm eating all the stuff and it's like super good. It's just delicious. And then he has one thing on his plate that I don't have. And I'm like, well, what's that? And he goes, no, this is not for you. It's too rich. And I was like, nah, it's for me. you should give me some too, And he goes, no, I don't think it's a good idea. And I was like, I think I know. Okay. I've traveled a lot. I can do it. And so I just take this hunk of this stuff that's covered in spices. So I can't even tell what it is. And it's essentially beef tartare. It's ground, but it's just ground meat that's raw that they put spice on. And I just take a huge bite of it. And it's delicious. It tastes incredible. But he was right. It was too rich. And so we're driving back to the place where we're supposed to shoot it. So we're shooting on a water well that they're just opening up for this small town. And I'm like getting out. I have to put a Steadicam on. And putting the Steadicam on and my stomach starts to turn. And I'm like, oh my God, this is good, And I look at the guy, and our driver, I look at him, I'm like, hey, where's the bathroom around here? Where can I use the bathroom? And he's like, the woods, And I was like, no. Like, I have to really go to the bathroom. Like, I need a place to go,
It's like my friend.
Like, where's that bathroom at, And he was like, the woods, And he just like gave me, April had like wet wipes in her backpack, and I just ran into the woods, and I was just so horrible, and my whole body was just like, I hate you so much, and I just immediately started sweating, and I was like hanging onto this tree, and then this cow came up in the forest. This cow came up and he started licking, like he was going to lick my face. And I was like, get out of here.
You're like, not now, babe.
Get out of here.
Not now.
And he just like was looking, I was like, don't look at me like this. And it finished. I was done and I kind of cleaned myself up and then I go back out and I was like,
clean myself up.
I was like, I felt so much better though. I felt like incredible amounts better. And I was like walking back to the truck and I was still just sweating like all over myself. I just looked horrible. And this beautiful woman, this Ethiopian woman who was like in her 80s, which is unheard of in that country. I mean, the life expectancy in a lot of rural places in the third world is not very high, especially in a place like Ethiopia. And this woman walked up and she was like gorgeous. She had this wonderful face, this beautiful white hair, and she was wearing this like white robe. I mean, it was just like she looked amazing. And as she was walking up, I was like, oh my God. She looked at me and like started laughing because she was like, you look horrible, basically. And I did. I looked really bad. But I started laughing too. And then she started laughing more. And I was like, hey, can I take your picture? Is it okay? And she was like, yes. And so I took her picture and it's one of my favorite pictures I've ever taken. And I blew that picture up and I framed it and I gave it to April after the trip. So it all ended well, but it didn't start that way. Every time I see that picture, I think, what a beautiful picture and coming from such a horrible place.
Such a vulnerable moment for you.
Oh
my gosh.
The cow.
I don't even want to like be in my body whenever I feel that kind of rumbling going on. I can't imagine not having somewhere that I can actually sit my ass down when it's happening.
It's the worst. It's
the
such
strength
a horrible
that you
feeling.
showed for that.
Yeah, well, you kind of.
I just have this vision of you holding on like Tarzan, just like for dear life.
And the cow just like coming over to say hello, like
it's coming over.
Oh my God,
like,
stranger,
get out of
hi.
here, you! Like, and then just looked at me, and I was like, it was like judging me. I think I just felt like I was like, look at you in your shame here in this like, woods.
You disgust me.
And I went back, and the driver was like, I was like, you were right. It was too much. He was like, I told you.
Yeah.
Bless.
Oh man.
Well, how about favorite? I know we have already said that celebrity is just like an idea, but favorite person you've ever worked with, like just because you really respected their craft, or or they were just like strikingly like attractive. Like I worked with Nicole. Well, I didn't work with her. She was on set. Nicole Kidman once. Her husband was shooting a music video, and she just came out to like watch. And when I saw her, I was like, "Oh, you're like a different type of pretty. Like it's like a pretty like I don't even really know what to do with that. It's because she's just so strikingly aesthetically pleasing. I don't know.
Yeah.
So is there someone that you've worked with that's like caught you off guard?
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely been caught off guard by people's beauty for sure. I think there's two thoughts that actually come to mind. One was probably like 3 years ago. I shot a commercial for CMT. It was like the CMT Artist of a Lifetime kind of like promo thing, and the Artist of a Lifetime was Randy Travis, and we were doing it with a younger artist who was going to like cover some of his songs. So we were with a younger artist called John Pardee. And he didn't know, but we got Randy to come to the club where he was doing the covers of Randy's songs. And he was talking about how much Randy meant to him because his grandmother, that was like her favorite artist. And so every time he thinks about Randy's songs, he thinks about his grandma. And it was like really touching. Like, and I'm in there and we're just like, we're setting up to shoot this thing. And then Randy comes being pushed in his wheelchair by his wife. Because he had a stroke years past, and he came in, and when John saw him, he like kind of started laughing for a second, and he kept trying to go through the song, and then he just burst into tears. And Randy was just sitting there in his chair, and he was just smiling at him because he can't really even speak anymore, Randy Travis. And it was like such an incredible moment. It was so cool, and Randy was incredibly kind. Like, he didn't say anything because he can, and he wasn't like, but he just was like, his presence was just like, it was so generous. Yeah. And I thought that was really, really awesome. That had such an impact on me. And then the other one was I got to do an interview with Vince Gill once at him and Amy's house. And he was the coolest guy. He was so kind. And like, we walk into his house. They don't live in like a gated area or anything. It's just like this house, this like nicer house. And we pull in the driveway and we go in. He's like bare feet in his kitchen. And he's like, oh man, I wish Amy was here. She could have made something up for you guys. I'm horrible in the kitchen. And we were like, that's totally fine. We're here to, talk to you, Vince. And okay, well, I guess we'll do it in the studio. And we like go into the studio and he has all these guitars. He has all this stuff. And like, sits down with a guitar, and then his friend Paul Franklin, who I later found out is like one of the greatest steel guitar players of all time, he comes over. And so he's got his steel guitar out. And then they just sit there and talk and play for us for like 2 hours. And he basically like teaches us the history of like California country music and why he made Bakersfield. And he shows it to us even on guitar. He's like, so like this would have sounded like this in California. And he plays it, and he's like, but in Nashville, it would have been a little bit more slick. It would have sounded like this. And he like plays it again, and you're like, what is happening? And, I never liked country music. I never really knew anything about it. Even when I lived here in Nashville for a while, I was like, nah, not my thing. But I remember after that day, I was like, he literally like just changed the way I think about this whole form of music. He's an incredible guy, and he's like a major like custodian of country music,
It's very cool.
Yeah. That is so cool. My husband's a musician, and he would be like so excited to be part of that experience. You know what I mean? Like, I think the people that really love music and love to play music, that would be like such an insane experience.
Opportunity.
To just
and then like your work, it's like your work. Like, Dave's out working today, and that's like his,
Yeah.
Oh, it's crazy.
Just hanging out in the studio. Like, that's crazy.
Exactly. I felt so like it was so cool and so like silly that I even got to do that. Oh, and then just recently, I guess this was probably a year or so ago, Roman and I did like a commercial with Shaq, with Shaquille O'Neal. And that was so much fun because Roman's like hilarious. So Shaq was like telling jokes to him, and they were like messing around. And then at the end, Shaq was like, they were like, Shaq, I think we're done with you, man. We got you out early. He had like 10 or 15 minutes left. And he started just calling us out on set and basically like going like, hey, you want to come up and get a picture? And he took a picture with every one of us in the crew.
Oh, that's so nice when people
like
do that.
Individually. Him and Roman's picture is hilarious.
Oh, I'm sure.
Him and my picture is funny because his hand is on my shoulder and it's like as big as my head. And it's really great. And it's all on green screen. So Roman actually changed his, because his like Shaq has his arms around him like this, and he made it look like it was like a prom picture.
Hysterical.
Of course.
Oh my
I feel
gosh.
so on brand for Roman.
Yeah.
What is the project you've worked on that you're the most proud of? Like if you look back and you're like, I could have only ever done this one project. This is the
Yeah.
or top five. You know, it's like you don't have to give us all five, but like it'd be in the top five.
Yeah. I know for a fact that one of them would be, I got to direct 3 spots for National Geographic in conjunction with Dow Chemical about recycling initiatives throughout third world countries. And we went to Bangkok, Thailand. We went to Sao Paulo, Brazil, and we went to Nairobi, Kenya. You know, it was so interesting because that was one where the ending products are good. They're nice pieces. They're like, they are what they are. They kind of had to be, I think they were kind of caught in between two worlds where it was like they had to be an ad. So, but they were also like these true stories of people's real work. So we kind of got to tell the story, but then we also kind of like had to make it more in like the advertising kind of realm. And so I think the ending pieces are okay. They're not like my favorite edits in the world, but that experience of going with a crew and going into those places and meeting all those people and seeing the work that was being done in all these places, that was incredible. That was a 100% a life-changing job for me. And I'm so close with that crew that I was with. That was Evolve. That was an Evolve job. And that was Aaron Selden, Pete Townsend, Brian Skinner, Paul Williams for one of the trips, Ryan Fuquay for a couple, I think. And then
what a dream team
Maria
you're just
Valette.
rattling off right now.
I know, isn't it? I know. And we literally got to travel to all those places together over the course of like 2 months. And just to do that, to direct, and that was such a wonderful time. So I would say that's definitely that's high up there. But then other ones, I guess, for other reasons, you know, my first short film I did with Will Holland, who's one of my best friends and a wonderful writer director, and we did a short film called The Unbeliever with our other friend Casey Fuller, who's the lead, and that was a tremendous process. That's a high point for me still, and that was 8 years ago.
That's awesome. Kate,
Yes.
do you have any more questions for Dave before we release him for his weekend?
Well, as somebody that has never traveled out of the country, I would love to know because I also don't like flying. So if I'm going to go out of the country, it's going to be like legitimately like 1 or 2 times maybe in my life. So can you give me like just one of your favorite places to go, scenery wise, like food? I'm a foodie kind of girl. I also love the outdoors. So like a place that kind of involves that scenery and food is what I'm looking for.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think Europe would be a great place for you because dependent upon what kind of cuisine you like, you can always sort of but also because once you fly there, which will be the hard part for you, right? We get that out of the way.
Yeah.
Then you can take trains everywhere. And literally everywhere.
Love
and
the
it's
ground.
So simple. And yes. So I would say go to Europe. I mean, if you can swing it, and you can get there, either land in Paris or land even in London, and you can take a train to Paris. But that way you could go to Paris, you could go to Amsterdam, you could go to the south of France. You're going to start seeing stuff that's just going to blow your mind. And at the same time, everywhere you're going is like another food adventure, right? But the coolest part about Europe is that we think of it like in America, we think, oh, okay, well, we're going to take a car ride 4 or 5 hours and it's going to get me to Indianapolis, right? Which isn't too different than Nashville, Tennessee. If you go for 4 hours in Europe, you're going to be in a completely different country that has completely different customs and food and even like topography of land will be different. So I would say for someone who is like, look, I'm only really going to do this once, that's where I would say to go, because you're going to get the most sort of bang for your buck, I think, even though Europe is very expensive.
Yeah, sure.
But that's what I would say.
Isn't everything now?
Yeah, exactly. I asked my wife
thank
to
you
marry
so
me
much for.
Sorry. I was just going to say, I asked my wife to marry
you're
me in London. I buried a note under a tree there and took her to the tree, and then 20 years later, we just went back to the tree, and so we just did like a trip in Europe with our 10-year-old with Ivy, and she loved it. I think it was also really cool to kind of start her in England because, you know, it's different, but it's not really that different. And then you know, you kind of can push from there to be like, okay, you want to like go for the next one. It's going to be really different this time. But, you know, she had a really, really good time. So I think it was like a good like doorway for her.
Oh my gosh. I love that so much. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This has been so cool to get to know you a bit. And Jen has always had like nothing but incredible good things to say about you. And it's so fun to it's been so fun to sit down and chat with you and just kind of like hear about all of your adventures. Like you're like the perfect guest for the Adventure Club to come on and tell us all of you. I feel like we could do a whole nother episode with you where we just talk about literally just your traveling. I mean, we touched on such a small piece of that. So we'll have to find out a time to get you back on for another episode.
We'll do 2.0. Yeah, you know, we'll just walk around the block again.
The travel edition. There it is.
And Dave and I are going to be together next week in Johnson City, Tennessee. So
Johnson City, Tennessee. Nice. Talk about travel. Get ready.
Talk about travel. Well, thanks so much, Dave. Have a great day.
You're welcome. Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Adventure Club podcast. If you haven't followed us on Instagram, you can do that at the Adventure Club podcast. If you liked the episode, please go on whatever you're listening to and give us a review. Subscribe if you'd like. This has been so much fun, and we just are so happy that y'all are here.